One of the biggest questions I get, guys, lately, even recently, is whether or not I would sell my collection of things. Mostly my comic collection of the Archie Sonic the Hedgehog comics. This is not the first time that I've been asked whether or not I would sell something. As a matter of fact, people would ask me whether or not I would sell my Sally plush. And I always have to come up with the answer of no. And the reason I come up with that answer, and I still stand by that answer, is because of various reasons. When it comes to my Sally plush, let me ask you this, if you spend over 200 something dollars on a plush like this, would you want to get rid of it? Would you want to sell it? No. I've had this plush for about 13 years now. And the thing is, I spent, like I said, over 250 bucks on this on eBay to get it from Sydney, Australia to my home in Lawrence, Kansas at that time. So no, I am not planning to sell it. Nor am I planning to sell my Sonic comic books. I've been a subscriber or was a subscriber to the Archie Sonic comic books since 1998. And I was a subscriber up into its finale, or its, the partnership ending between Archie and Sega a few years back. So that's over 20 years. That's about over 20 years, or near 20 years. So no, I don't plan to sell my collection. I don't plan to sell my Sally plush. I don't plan to do any of that. And I know that might sound weird to some people. It might sound like I'm hoarding. But let me ask you this. If you were to ask someone like Michael Mercy, if he was willing to sell his collection, do you think he would say yes? Well, maybe if he had duplicates of certain figures and stuff, maybe he'd consider it. But most of the time, the figures and stuff you see in his toy museum, he would not sell. Because he's taken a lifetime to accumulate that and collect that. And do you think he wants to do you think, honestly, what I'm trying to look for is, do you think he wants to go through that all over again? Do you think Michael Mercy wants to go through that all over again? Have to rebuild that toy museum because, people want him to sell this, they want him to sell that? Of course not. Of course he doesn't want to do that. Do you think when somebody, and I'm sure he gets this all the time, do you think he wants to sell his USS Flag, the big G.I. Joe playset, that he took time himself to even customize and make even better than what it was, kind of modify, if you will? Do you think Michael Mercy would want to sell that? No, because he knows it would take time and money to get another USS Flag. He knows that. It's like if somebody was to ask him, oh, do you want to sell that big Masterpiece Optimus Prime you showed off recently? Or this figure or that figure. No, of course not. Because then he'd have to go all over again. He'd have to start all over again to try to get it. The point of the matter is, when you ask somebody whether or not they're going to sell their collection, or they're going to sell something that they spent a lot of money on to add to the collection, most of the time the answer is going to be no. I mean, it's like if somebody was to ask, my mom or my mom, oh, do you want to sell your Beatles collection? Do you want to sell your Beatle albums and all that? And she would say, heck no. Well, maybe she wouldn't say heck no, and maybe she would consider it, but most of the time she would not agree to it. She would not want to sell it because it's taken her a while to get those albums, and those are the original albums. She would not want to part with those unless she had to. The point that I'm getting at is this. Okay, the point that I'm getting at is this. No matter who you ask, if they've taken a long time to accumulate a toy collection, a comic book collection, or memorabilia collection from their past up to the present, if you will, if it took them so long to do that, do you think they'd be willing to part with anything that they have? Do you think they'd be willing to part with something they spent a lot of money to try to obtain to add to the collection? No. Do you think they would want to part with comic book issues that they've taken years to collect and build up? No. They wouldn't. They would not. I mean, Zara Nizarak, Sean McLean. There is no, now maybe, I don't know how Sean thinks, at times, but I know in a sense that if somebody was to approach him and say, "Hey, Sean, you got all those comic books from the past. You got all those Laserdiscs and all that. You mind? Have you ever considered selling them? Do you mind selling them? I'd like to buy that off you. Oh, I'd like to buy that. Do you mind selling it?" Do you think he would do that? You think Sean would do that? Maybe, maybe not. But mostly the latter. The point that I'm getting at, folks, the point that I'm getting at is it's not wrong to ask whether or not if someone's willing to sell something out of the collection. But most of the time, you need to realize that they're not going to agree to it because they've taken too long to collect that item or get that item in their hands. And that's just the reality of it. That's just the reality. Now, I know I said in a previous video that I've gone through a big life change over the past 48 hours. And that is true. But I know the Lord above is going to take care of me, and He's going to lead me in the right direction, down the right path, into the next chapter in my life. But that doesn't mean I'm going to sell what I've accumulated. He's allowed me, God above has allowed me, He has allowed me, fortunately, over the past 6.5 years, to be able to go out and accumulate this, buy this. Even after I've taken care of bills and stuff here and there, He's allowed me to go out and buy this kind of stuff. He hasn't prevented me from doing so unless bills and stuff became more of a priority. And there have been numerous times where I would want to get something, but God would say, "No, now's not the time. You need to wait. This is your priority." And I would take care of that priority. But the fact of the matter is this. He gave me 6.5 years at a great job. And now I'm going to be moving on to a new chapter in my life. But just because right now, temporarily, and very temporarily, I'm unemployed, it does not mean I'm going to give up on all this. I'm not in that state just yet. I may have to wait on a few items in the future. I'm not denying that. I may have to wait. But I'm not at a state right now where basically, I have to give up on any of this. I'm not. So, once again, to let anybody know that's always asking, will you or will you not be willing to sell this or sell that? The answer is no. And the same goes for anybody else that's been asked that question. Like I said, Michael Mercy, do you think he likes being asked that question various times? And I'm sure he's had it asked to him. Of course he doesn't. I mean, the only time he'll ever sell is if something is a duplicate of what he has. And that's it. He's not going to go out and say, "Oh yeah, you want the USS flag that I, took time to get and took time to customize and modify to make it look like the way it is? You want me to sell that to you? Hey, no problem." He's not going to come out and say that. You think Optibonomus, is going to be willing to sell any of his collection that he's taken time to accumulate? No. No, because God gave him the opportunity to accumulate that collection. God gave Michael the opportunity to accumulate his collection. God gave Sean McLean opportunity to accumulate the collections he's had. So no, there is no way whatsoever. There is no way whatsoever. They'd be willing to part with any of that stuff unless it really became necessary. Unless financially, this world went to pot, all across the board, then yeah, that might be the only time. Because if this world goes to pot financially all across the board, and everybody is released from where they are, and they no longer could get any money of any kind, then yeah, that would be the only time. But now it's not. And that's what I'm trying to get across. Look, as I said, it's cool if you want to ask, you got the right to do that. But the thing is, most of the time, you need to expect the answer to be the big N-O. I mean, unless somebody has a duplicate of something down the line and they feel they can get rid of it, then that's fine. That's probably the only other way you're going to get it. But when it comes to asking if somebody's willing to part with a collection they've accumulated over the years and tried to build over the years, as well as something they may have spent over $250 on that is only exclusive in certain countries, then the answer most of the time will be no. So I just thought I'd come on here and let you guys know that. I mean, I understand some of you would like to have these things in your collection. You would like to own them yourself. But most of the time, you know, despite how you may think, you may view it on behalf of the person that rejects the offer, you know, most of the time the answer is going to be no. And I know from personal experience, and I think we all do, that sometimes that's a hard word and hard answer to swallow. But you know what? We just got to move on from it. So, just thought I'd come on here and finally give you guys a reason and an answer to the question of will you ever sell, you know, at times. And hopefully you guys understand that. So, let me know what you all think down below. Comment if you like. I'm out.